You never said, did you? Not many people know that. I mean,
No, Peter Sellers said that. Peter Sellers, yeah, because I'm always full of information and facts. You know, if you mention something, I said, you know, Peter always had the new gadgets. He was the first one to have an answer machine. I called him one day, he wasn't in, and there was me saying, my name is Michael Caine. I just want you to know that Peter Sellers is not in. Not many people know that. He invented that, not many people know that. Yeah. And then everyone who rang him, they got me saying, not many people know that. I didn't wear glasses until after I'd made Zulu and got recognised in the street. I somehow felt that I'd disappeared behind them. You know, people wouldn't know who it was, because I'm basically a very shy man, I suppose, although it doesn't seem like that. I once read a psychiatric book which said, you become what you're afraid of. But I was just so terribly, terribly shy. When I became an actor, it was an act of tremendous courage for me to get up. And then I killed myself becoming an actor, really. And I just defeated that shyness. And that's one of the reasons I became an actor, actually. We were all unknown actors in the 60s, and Peter got this lead in this play, The Long and the Short and the Tall. In those days, British actors were all drunks. We had heroes, and our heroes were people like Trevor Howard and people like that. We thought to be a great actor, you had to be a drunk. And so we all became drunks. I mean, O'Toole was a notorious drunk, and so was I. I had read that alcohol destroys inhibition cells in the brain. And so one of the great enemies of the actor, obviously, is inhibition. I mean, when you go to drama school, they make you do stupid things that just so you don't make a fool of yourself and you don't care. I'm doing now.
Exactly.
Yeah. You see, I don't care. We all used to drink to get rid of our inhibitions. And with O'Toole, I mean, he really drank a lot. I was his understudy, and my job was getting the booze in. I'd never been an understudy. I was just a drunk actor. And then I had to stay sober to count the change. So it got me off the booze a little bit because I had a job. It never destroyed Peter's performance. We never let it interfere with the performance, because Peter was brilliant. He became a massive star overnight in that. And I took over from him. He went off to do Lawrence of Arabia. I took over from him, and then that helped me along my way as well. But I remember once I was standing outside the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Beverly Hills, and I was talking to Cary Grant, and a woman saw me, and she said, you're him. She said, I have been here for 3 weeks. I haven't seen one movie star. And she came over and she got my autograph. She said, Michael Caine. And she turned to Cary Grant, who I was talking to, and she said, you never see any movie stars, do you? No, my dear, you don't. If you have a broken ankle, everywhere you go, the lift's out of order. If you find a bad situation, try to use the difficulty and find something good in it. I'm sitting here for weeks with this broken ankle. Use the difficulty. So I wrote the book.
Wow.
I remember O'Toole once said, Saturday night, we finished the show. There's no show Sunday. So it was Saturday night. He said, let's go out and do this and that. The next thing I know, I wake up and it's daylight. I'm lying next to O'Toole, both of us fully clothed, in a strange bed. I shook him and he said, what time is it? And I said, it's 7 o'clock in the evening. So he said, all right, we better get home, you know. It's 7 o'clock Sunday evening. He said, I missed lunch. And then this girl came in and she said, it's 7 o'clock. And then O'Toole said, wait a minute. He said, I've done this before. He said, you don't know this, Michael. He said, what day is it? And she said, Monday. The curtain goes up at 8 and we didn't even know where we were. And I never found out what happened to Sunday. And he couldn't tell me.
Wow.
I came into this business because I always saw working class people in movies, in English movies when I was young. Always used to be sort of guys who were from middle class families. They never knew how to fight. So when you get in a fight, they'd always go, what is going on here? You know, and I really became an actor to get my own type of person right. I can do that better than he's doing it. It was nothing to do with being a movie star. It was just this guy pouncing about being working class and grovelling. The working class never grovel. They don't give a tuss about anybody. You know, we don't care. The class thing in this country was much, much stronger when I was very young. And I was always very aware of it. The villains were always sort of terribly like that sort of chaps, and suddenly they'd be, "Gord blimey, Gov, you know, I'll come quietly, it's a pair cop. I done what was necessary to get a few quids," and all this was going. Everyone went to RADA, and the woman always used to say, "I love you, yes. I love you." Yes. And in America, you see those movies, and everybody laughs like hell on television. You go, "I love you, darling." It's the relationship of Stalin and Churchill and Roosevelt, really the way the whole of Europe was carved up after the war and the way they ran the war. I play Stalin, Bob Hoskins plays Churchill, and John Lithgow plays Roosevelt. "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm doing this thing with Churchill and Stalin." And they said, who are you playing?" I say, "Stalin." And they look at me and they go, yeah. "Who's playing Churchill?" I said, "Bob Hoskins." And the next question is always, Is it a comedy? We came from very poor people, and she used to stand behind the door and use me when the bailiffs came. I was about 3 years old, and she'd open the door, and I'd go, "Mum's out." She'd slam the door. That was my first acting. I remembered all the lines. It's in the silences you see a lot of the performance.
The listening.
Yeah, it's the listening. Movies are listening, reaction and behaviour. They're not acting as in the theatre, which is an entirely different thing. A movie star gets a script and he says, how can I change this script to suit me? A movie actor gets a script and says, how can I change me to suit the script? And that's what I am. I'm the second one. I'm a movie actor. It's unconscious, but people always see you in what you're doing, so it's your personality will come through in it if you have one. I don't know when I got a personality. I didn't have it for about 20 years. The first 20 years of my life I had no personality at all. I was a sort of shadow figure. Someone said to me, do you identify with Ray Say, that agent? I said, no, I identify with the girl. In as much as we always have that period in our lives when we really don't know who we are and who we want to be. And there comes a time when all of us, no matter how humble or whatever it is, we all eventually invent ourselves and become what we've invented. I didn't invent myself until I became an actor. And one day I'd called myself Michael Caine, and then I was someone else. It's a movie called The Italian Job. We were criminals and we were stealing money out of a van. And I had this man with the explosive expert, and he was blowing the doors off so we could get in and get the money. And he blew the thing up into smithereens. And I turned to him and I said, you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. Hey! I went to America and I came back and then everybody kept saying, you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off. And this saying caught on, so I thought I'd use it for the title.
Yeah. We got together for 2 of the worst films ever made.
Yeah. What happened was, when I got to about 60, I got a script and I sent it back to the producer saying the part's too small, and he sent it back to me saying you weren't supposed to read the lover, you're supposed to read the father. And I thought, hello, it's over. So what I did is I retired and I went to Miami and I bought an apartment and I opened a restaurant and I wrote my autobiography. While I was there, Jack Nicholson was also there and he was living in Miami. I was writing my book and running my restaurant, and then one day he came to me. We became very good friends, and he came to me and said, I've got a script called Blood and Wine and there's a very good part in it for you. I read it and I did it, and the lesson to me was I had thought that it was over for me, but one of the lessons of the book is whenever it is not necessarily really over, because I went on to win an Academy Award for Cider House Rules and made 6 of the best pictures I ever did with Chris Nolan. And I'm still working. I mean, next week I go back to Prague and finish a movie, you know, and I'm 85. I retired at 60.
Michael Caine.
Yeah, but I'll tell you a story about that.
Oh, yeah.
I was making a picture in the Philippines and we were invited to this very, very posh, expensive house to a party, and I'm being introduced to people, and the hostess is standing over there and she's looking at me rather nastily. There was a moment when I was a bit free and she went... So I went over her and she said, are you a drug dealer? I said, no. Why do you ask? Why is everybody calling you Michael Caine? You know that story's true because you couldn't make it up.